Guys, my name is Charlie Bathgate. You may know me. I work with Anand and Peter here over at sanglucci.com, and I have a very special guest with us today, Ann-Christina Lang. So welcome, Ann. If you guys don't know Ann-Christina, you can know more about her work, learn more about her work. We actually had her sit down with Anand and Ezra at the end of her stay with us this summer.
Yeah.
And they did a really cool interview on the psychology of trading, the psychology of the markets, and how it compares from an automated trader's perspective compared to a hand trader's perspective. So if you're interested in that, just go to our YouTube channel, search Ann-Christina Lang, L-A-N-G-E. But why don't you tell these guys a little bit about, who you are, just the basics, and then your research and what brought you over to work with, to research with Sang Lucci. These guys. Give me the rundown.
Yes. So I'm employed as an assistant professor at Copenhagen Business School, and I'm doing this research project on the psychology of markets with the increased use of algorithms to execute trading.
Right.
And the main argument in the media and by the regulators will be that it actually, algo trading eliminates emotions. So when you trade, there's no psychology at stake anymore.
Right.
And I would say that my research shows something quite different, actually.
Right,
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we met up with you. I mean, how did you get in touch? Was it Twitter? I mean, how did you?
No, I read Dark Pools.
Read Dark Pools.
I read
okay.
Dark Pools, and I read Chaim's book on the problem of high frequency trading, and I approached him, and then he forwarded my mail to you, and
and we were all together.
Like
Here, scoot up a little bit. I want to make sure these guys can hear you. Okay, so let's talk about your research then. Let's talk about what have you found. I mean, I haven't talked to you and I mean, we've been exchanging emails, but I haven't really talked about your research in a couple months. So where are you at right now? Are you focusing on something new? You tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so I'm focusing more on crowd dynamics.
Okay.
So not focusing on the individual trader as reading other traders' intentions, but actually looking at the interrelation between algorithms and how they might form a specific idea or understanding of the crowd.
Okay.
So in the literature on finance, there's a lot of discussion about the trading crowd, the crowd that's trading in the open outcry pit, for instance, and how they try to game each other, and they have different strategies for how to, like, I can fool you by reading your face, and if you're sweating a little bit, I will know that I can pick you off, So there's a psychology that plays out at the open outcry pit.
Okay.
But then once algorithm comes into play, it's a very different dynamic, but there's still gaming strategies that are actually quite interesting and quite sophisticated.
Okay, so is it, I mean, we're talking just buyers versus sellers here? I mean, how does it break down? How does the crowd split up?
Actually, mostly in the very fast, low latency game,
okay.
It will actually be that algorithms, they tend to be so fast that they can profit from being faster than the crowd. So they would, for instance, most high frequency traders, they trade from exploiting correlations between different financial instruments.
Right.
So if they are highly correlated, they can then profit from trading in two different exchanges, for instance, or two different products.
Okay.
And they can then be faster than the correlation, that the price move that they.
Right. So they're sort of front running the correlation. They know where the price is going to be due to the correlation. Yeah. Front run. Okay.
Or if they can somehow read that there's an inefficiency in the market where large institutional investors or retail traders, they are not like trading in a rational way, so they can actually eliminate that kind of inefficiencies by being faster and
so you're saying that they can see when larger entities are not trading rationally.
Yeah,
you said, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and
they can then somehow profit from that.
Okay, and so they, when you say they can see that, I mean, is it through their buying and selling behavior? I mean, is it through order types that they're using? How are they reading behavior?
It's reading, the order book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's reading.
So it's like detecting movements in the order book.
Right.
Trying to detect the latency or the depth of the order book and determine.
So that's become the new sort of the equivalent of sweat on your face in the trading
exactly.
pit, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
or you can see someone is canceling a lot.
Right.
It might be that there's a lot of high frequency activity in the order book, and then you can adjust your algorithms towards that kind of activity and know how fast the other guy's trading and
Okay.
So there's quite interesting strategies out there.
Okay.
I think.
And I remember when you were here, you'd mentioned sort of swarm theory, right?
Yeah.
And how I'm very uneducated in this, but seems to me that there's a lot of math that goes into predicting how swarms, like say a swarm of bees will act and behave. And that's actually supposed to be a very specific way or a very efficient way, right, for large groups of organisms to conduct themselves, right?
Exactly.
Have you found that some of that stuff goes on in the markets?
We're in the middle of filming.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, guys.
Can you talk a little bit about so actually, I haven't found anyone that uses that kind of mathematical model.
Okay.
But it's a term that a lot of traders they use to describe their own trading. So
really?
When I ask, so how does psychology come into play? They're like, well, it's like a swarm. It's like I put in algorithms that trade very fast. It's imperceptible for the human brain, but it's there and it works. So it's like a swarm. It goes in there and it changes something, and you can't immediately see it, but you can see the movement of the order book.
But so it's like in terms of it's a swarm. I mean, are they proliferating in the market with that many different orders, and these orders are interacting with one another and making changes as a result, or are you just talking about like sort of their orders going in and it's becoming sort of part of the swarm, which would be it's the market in general?
I would say it's mostly the first part, actually.
Okay.
But it's more due to the fact because I'm looking at the futures market.
Right.
And that's my focus. So there's not that many different order types actually in the futures market.
Okay.
So
that simplifies things a little bit.
It simplifies it quite a lot actually. It's more like there's different kinds of algorithms that interact together and they can read each other and put in orders and
Right. Okay. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this, but the all sorts of statistics get thrown out in terms of the amount of trading activity that is actually attributable to algorithms, right? I think the prevailing number right now is like 70%. I mean, do you feel like that is pretty accurate in terms of the amount of volume that is attributable to algorithms, or is that really what your research is on?
Yeah, it is. I guess you have to distinguish between high frequency trading and algo trading as such.
Okay.
And I know that the TAP group came out with some new numbers saying that it's actually only 50% now.
Wow.
So it has decreased in equities, but it's remained stable in futures.
Okay.
And I guess with high frequency trading is because there's coming more and more high frequency traders into the game.
Okay.
So they lose edge because a lot of people are basically doing the same thing.
And
I mean, a lot of economics, they have proven that actually high frequency trading does tighten the spread, and that means that markets becomes more efficient, and once they becomes more efficient, high frequency traders tend to lose edge.
Right.
So I guess that's a kind of natural development.
That's interesting. So the more players that come into the game, the less opportunity there is, which eventually means the less players will be in the game, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. But they have to find new ways to make profit from the way that they trade. I mean, one guy explained to me that within the next 5 years, you can't really distinguish between the very low latency high frequency traders and the more sophisticated longer term algorithms, because the low latency guys, they know that they need to be smarter because the space is getting more and more competitive, and the very sophisticated ones, they know they need to simplify the algorithms a little bit to gain more speed, so in 5 years it will actually be the same space.
Okay.
Because right now you can actually distinguish between the very simple algorithms doing more of the spreading with very low latency, and then the more sophisticated machine learning ones that do more of the arbitrage and more sophisticated strategies.
Okay, got you. So take me through. I mean, give me the sort of the bigger distinguishing factors. If you're a shop that's running, low latency strategies, right? What are the bigger differentiators between a shop like that and a shop that's running, what you were just talking about, the sort of higher tier, more sophisticated algorithms that are longer term?
Yeah,
in terms of their strategy.
Yeah, well, I'm looking more also at the trader behind the algorithm as well.
Right.
So I guess that's also a matter of having different skill sets.
Okay.
So in the very low latency, it would be programmers and engineers being employed to actually develop the algorithms.
Right.
Where in the more sophisticated algorithmic space, it would be like people with PhDs in physics or math.
Right.
Because you need those kind of more quantitative skills to be able to think about these strategies and these algorithms.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
it can be all different kinds of strategies. So you asked me about the strategies. So I think with the very low latency, there's a tendency that the strategies, there's like maybe 3 types basically. So it seems like people are doing similar things, where with the slower ones, they can be more sophisticated, and I can't really say what people they're actually doing in that space, because I've seen one company and I can only say what they're doing.
Right, yeah. So I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here, can you lay out sort of the 3 types of low latency strategies that you've seen most prevalently? I mean, you don't have to go into specifics, but just sort of what they usually do.
Yeah, so it would be like market making, and then scalping and spreading.
Okay.
That would sort of be the main
Splitting.
ones.
Take me through
Spreading.
Oh, spreading. Oh,
Yeah,
spreading. Okay,
spreading.
absolutely. Okay,
Exactly.
gotcha.
Yeah, so I think
All right.
that's the main ones I've seen so far.
Have you? Do you feel like in general one subtype is traditionally or is producing more results than another one? Are you seeing the market makers are more successful than spread traders?
I'm not sure whether the market maker is more successful, but it's more stable somehow.
Right.
It can actually trade through more volatility, I think, than some of the other ones.
Okay.
It's not as risky either, so
right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But probably not. It earns a very, very small profit on each trade, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about like speed. So actually I haven't seen you since Flash Boys came out, right? And
it just came out when I were here the first time.
When you were here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It just came out.
All right.
Yeah, so it was
around
that time. It was interesting to do interviews with traders where they would feel the need to legitimize themselves.
Right.
So that gave me a lot of insight to know how they are thinking about their own work.
Yeah, tell me, I mean, this is sort of taking it out of the market and looking at how this industry is changing and how different entities and players are looking at themselves. But I think what you were just saying is that a lot of the shops that were out there that used to be very zipped up, wouldn't really speak about their work at all.
Yeah.
Now that Flash Boys came
definitely.
out, So have you seen that change in terms of getting access to people to interview them and what?
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I started this project, it was actually over a year ago.
Okay.
And I couldn't get access to anyone in the high frequency trading space. It was really a problem. I then went to New York in January because I decided I just have to go here to talk to people and meet people face to face. Maybe it will help.
Right.
I got a few interviews and I got then connected to you guys during that spring. And then the book came out and suddenly people, they actually wanted to talk.
Right.
Yeah, because I think they were thinking, okay, now we have a bad reputation anyway, and maybe we have to stand up and actually speak about what we're doing, and if we become a little bit more public and people understand it, maybe they will not be so much against it as in the book with Michael Lewis. Yeah. So
here's a question. So then, if prior to Flash Boys coming out, you were really getting access to shops that were probably a little more anti-HFT, the order type. I mean, obviously you were working with Chaim and you knew a lot about him, so you kind of got that perspective pretty heavily. Yeah. Then when you got access to sort of the other side, the pro HFT side, did your personal views shift on market dynamics and the way things like who's right, who's wrong? I mean,
quite an interesting question. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I didn't know anything about the field, so my first reaction from as an outsider and as a sociologist was like, oh, is this really happening? Is this really taking place?
Right.
And then slowly I'm starting to understand why these things take place and starting to understand the dynamic of the whole thing, and it's much more complex than I could ever imagine. So in that sense,
when you say that thing, you mean the order type scandal or just the speed and latency?
The speed
scandal?
and the latency games. And I think, because it's very easy to be judgmental about what's going on when you're from the outside, but it's just because you don't really get what's actually going on. And
Right. I mean,
I think with the order type debate, it's a bit different than the Michael Lewis's book, right? Because the order type debate is like, it's a scandal in the sense that it was illegal. So I guess Michael Lewis is really going after the structure of the market itself.
Right. Okay. In terms of speed right now, the shops that you're talking to, the traders that you're talking to, do you still feel like speed is as big of a deal, as big of an advantage? Co-location is it still as important, or do you feel like more emphasis now has been placed on strategy and slowing down? Cause now it's going slow. Often a lot of the top guys are saying, hey, I'll slow my orders down.
Definitely. I mean, it's like speed is a necessity. It's not the edge or the advantage anymore.
Right.
It's a necessity. You need to be in that game, but it's not where you gain your edge, so you have to be more sophisticated for sure.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so speed is essentially a commodity. Everyone has it, and you can't really play in the game unless you've got it. But you're not going to get any edge there anymore.
Exactly. And in the beginning, I would think, oh, these big heads, high frequency trading companies, they would have such big advantage because they have the access to the technology. But now I talk and I've seen what you're doing, and I'm starting to understand the infrastructure of setting up a high frequency trading shop. And you can actually have providers of these co-location services.
Right. Yeah.
So it is able for the smaller guys to set up a high frequency trading shop. So in that sense,
it's not completely out of reach for some. I mean,
exactly.
We're not just a guy in his basement, but we definitely don't have the infrastructure that like Citadel has.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
You can. it's more low-hanging fruit now to get the structures that you need in order to execute on something like this.
Yeah, it's becoming more public in a sense.
Well, all right. So now let's get into kind of some fun stuff. I mean, where do you see? I guess two questions for you. What do you feel like is the thing you're most excited about to research while you're here and talk to about? Sort of anything that's on a little bit of the fringe of the research that you've been doing, the next thing that you want to look into. Yeah. And then the second question would be, where do you feel like the markets, especially automated trading, and where do you see this? What conversation do you see you and I having in 10 years, right, about the markets and how these things are running? So we'll start with the first one. What do you think? What are you most excited to look into right now?
So actually, when I visited you the first time, I didn't realize how dynamic the field was and how entrepreneurial. So I see what you're doing is very creative, very entrepreneurial, and I'm quite interested in knowing where you are now. You know, just like what happened since we met last time. And then also going more into what is your view on high frequency trading, what you're doing now, and how do you deal with setting up the whole shop that you've been doing since I stayed here the last time. And also how do you deal with having so many different profiles in one space. We went a little bit into that last time, I think, but...
When you say different profiles, you mean different types of traders?
Yeah, exactly, different types of traders, also with different latencies, you know, so you have to... Also
we'll give you that tape. Yeah. I mean, that would be great. I think one of the things about us, I mean, I can answer one of those right now, is one of the things about us that makes it so interesting to be in our daily work environment is, you know, you have a guy like Ezra, you have Peter, you have Brian, you have Anand, you know, you have Roy, like the confluence of strategies and approaches. I think you saw a fair amount of that, you know, and it's with Chaim as well. There's kind of a cross-pollination that goes on there where you don't realize the degree to which when you're in one firm and one shop and you know, everyone's really focusing on executing a specific approach, how you can get a tunnel vision, you know, and you really can. I mean, even though it's finance, I mean, there's a lot of creativity and ingenuity and, you know, resourcefulness that comes into developing a lot of these strategies, and having, you know, different people doing different types of things and different types of approaches around you, I think really can challenge you a little bit and open your mind. I think a lot of the you know, all the guys in our operation would attest to that. You know? And we can talk about all the changes. I mean, we're on the cusp of some really exciting stuff, right on the verge of closing it. So we don't want to say anything publicly, but you know, we'll talk offline about that. Okay, so you want to talk? The next thing you want to do is research us again. Cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Exactly. And I think because I visited you for 6 weeks in the spring. I now stayed in Chicago as well, talked with other traders, and I've done much more interviews. So I guess after I visited you this second time, I will have to step back a little bit from the field, get my papers out, and maybe I will see you again in the spring again or something. So okay. And then trying to influence the academic agenda in this field as well.
Actually, that's a good question too. I mean, how are you finding the reception in the academic world?
I got so much attention.
Really?
Yeah.
People like it?
Yeah, they really like it, and also because access is such a problem. So everyone, they're like, how did you get access to this, and can you tell me more? You know? And then there's a whole hype at the moment around algorithms in general, not in trading, but in general. Like, because sociologists, they're interested in the social dynamics between people, and what happens to that when everything's pre-programmed into algorithms.
Absolutely. Okay, that's very interesting. So, I mean, you really did have my understanding of most academics is limited, but I don't think most of them get embedded, you know, with research subjects like you did. I mean, you were with us. You were with us every day for, like you said, 6 weeks. I mean, you had extensive interviews with other people. Some people we set you up with. Some people you know, found independently. You really did get it day-to-day insight of what it really is like.
I really try to get an insight into the field, because I think it's quite important to understand the people and how they perceive of themselves. And then, I mean, I cannot step back from the field and then say something about the psychology of trading without knowing the psychology of the people that I'm studying. So, that's basically my framing of it.
Okay.
And that relates to where our discussion is.
What's
I was thinking, I think we are going to talk about robots.
Robots?
Yeah, I think so.
In what sense?
Like fully automated trading machines working independently from the human brain and talking about the psychology of these machines. I think that.
So you're talking about human learning, like they will have machine learning, and so they will be.
I mean, it's developing so fast. Yeah. So I'm seeing that most of the people I've talked to, they say, yeah, we are trading, we are using machine learning, but not in very volatile markets, and not in extreme situations like a crisis or what we saw last week with the treasury curve.
Right.
So the firm I stayed at there, they actually had to shut down their whole trading business during that day, and they are not up and running.
This is a firm in Chicago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and they use quite sophisticated machine learning tools, but they are not able to actually include the very volatile periods. So, but
that's interesting because you'll get to talk to Ezra. He ran his algorithm through the volatility.
Oh, that's interesting. I have to talk to him about that.
Have you seen we're posting on Twitter? We're posting the P&Ls
on
Twitter, right? Yeah. So, and he did phenomenally well. I mean, it was very cool to see.
But he's doing non-directional trading as well. I think that's a clever choice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So probably that's why he's able to deal with this instead of being pushed around with.
Oh yeah, anybody who was doing directional trading, I think during that volatility. I mean, if you were on the right side, you were doing great. But yeah. It's different. Okay, so I cut you off. So they had machine learning. So you're saying it's not there yet.
It's not there yet, but it's going there. I think it's going in that direction. So it's quite close.
Okay.
And every time something like this happens, you learn a lot as a trader, and you can actually adjust your program to become even more sophisticated.
Right.
And then I think at some point you are able to trade through these volatile periods as well.
So if we do get to the point where we have algorithms and machines that have learning capabilities where they are essentially independent, right? Where they don't need a person to input data information to them and make changes in the code. What role do you feel like will be left for people at that point?
Yeah.
Will there be a?
I guess there will always be a person behind the algorithm.
Right.
So that's another finding from our research, actually, that the traders, they tend to be, even with a very sophisticated machine learning where it can readjust itself and adapt to the market conditions and stuff like that, they're quite attached to the algorithms.
Right.
So I've seen...
you mean like emotionally?
Emotionally. So, I mean, one trader, he actually traded with a very bad algorithm. He did simulations and it worked very well, but he spent so much time working on it that he was like, no, can you run it again? Can we please try again? And everyone was like, no, it's not making money. Why do you want to run it again? And he's like, I spent so much time on it, and you feel that it's an extension of yourself.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so there's really emotions in it, and that's also why I'm saying emotions are not being eliminated. I mean, it actually has an effect also in algorithmic trading.
Right.
There's always a human behind, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have to sit you down with Ezra again and have you talk to him, because I think he would, even a guy like Ezra who is better than anyone I think I've ever seen in any field at just making objective decisions, calculated.
A little bit of a different approach, I think.
Yeah, he's very good at stripping emotion out of things, but he's still an emotional kind of guy. Like, I would think that it's almost impossible to remove an emotional attachment to work that you've put so much time and effort into, because he's talked about building something, and it's like your baby, and you hit the button and it goes out and does what you teach it to do, and it comes back and provides results, and it does feel like an extension.
I think the way, I mean, some traders describe it to me as their baby, exactly, saying that you feel proud of it, and then when it's not doing well, you're like, but this is my work, I created it, and now it's doing bad, I cannot believe it. And but Ezra described to me more that it was a matter of him putting, like, he sees the algorithms as an extension of his trading intuition. Right. And I think that's a quite nice way to put it, because trader intuition, that's something you need, right? Right. And you need to have an understanding of the markets, even though you're pre-programming algorithms. Right. Right. Yeah. It's an extension of his understanding of him as a trader. Markets, Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's good to have you back in the offices. Thank you. It's good to be back. Yeah. Well, guys, if you just joined us, this is Professor Ann-Christina Lang, and she was embedded with us for 6 weeks earlier in the summer. She is becoming an expert on high-frequency trading and the markets in general, and the impact of high-frequency trading and automated trading on the sort of psychology and sociology of the markets. You're doing a lecture. I guess it's not a public lecture, so no. It's in a course. Okay, all right. So she's speaking at NYU tomorrow, but you got to be a student to get in. So, anyways, if you guys want to know more about this kind of stuff, definitely search on our YouTube page or on sanglucci.com for her name, Ann-Christina Lang. Just search Lange, and there's a very cool interview with her and Anand and Ezra talking about the differences of
the psychological approach of a hand trader like Anand and an automated trader like Ezra.
Yeah.
It's a great interview. So, and we'll probably do another one when you're here with us.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, if you have questions for Ann-Christina, feel free to email us. Contact at sanglucci.com. Yeah. She's very generous with her time. I can attest to that. And she'll answer what you guys need to know. But otherwise,
that would be great.
That's it. Cool. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.